All right, welcome to Philosophy of Origins. So far, I've given you kind of like an intro to philosophy, at least the journey of Western philosophy from the pre-Socratics all the way up to Kierkegaard is, I think, how far we went. But now I want you to take that philosophic knowledge and we're going to, it's almost like the eye of Sauron is how I see philosophy. And we're going to turn that eye now onto the topic of origins. And we're going to bring in all these people from Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Kierkegaard, Berkeley, Locke. And we're going to look at this topic of origins and just kind of try to dissect it from a philosophical perspective. The college also has a class called Scientific Models of Origins, where they do the same sort of thing, but they're using data, facts, scientific method, scientific presuppositions. What I'm going to be doing is more of a presuppositional philosophic approach. And I got a few people in here. What is a presupposition? Something you presume or presuppose, right? And we all start with presuppositions. And what I'd like to start with is as we transition into this talk on origins, I'm going to pitch to you that it's really a worldview issue, a worldview piece. Now, I love the scientific models where we can look at like fossils and carbon-14 and rates of decay and all that. Here we're going to be looking at things like abstract metaphysical principles and presuppositions, dealing with like metaphysics, ontology, etc. So here we go. This is not reality, it's a template to help you kind of think about things. But I'm a super visual learner, so I hope this helps you. This is where the class is headed, and hopefully it will make sense of some of the madness I've given you. I want to start with this piece, and we're going to call this Animism. Animism is a worldview that virtually everything is alive or has a spirit. We see this in a lot of indigenous or tribal societies. There's actually kind of like an animistic revivalist movement going on in the world as we speak, kind of like a neo-tribalism. We see that everything from like plugs to tattoos to even worldviews and people making their own sort of eclectic religions. Animism is this idea that virtually everything is alive, and why I say virtually is because some things are dead. Things are dead when the spirit departs. This is one of my this is my favorite mug, not one of, who was I talking to? And he is very much alive right now. I've had other mugs, but the spirit has departed. So an animist believes everything, there are no inanimate objects for the animist except for dead things. And remember, death does not mean end of existence, it simply means separation of spirit from the body. But the spirit continues, as does the body. Body returns to the earth, spirit goes back to God from whence it comes. This is what we see as the most primal. I've talked to a lot of missionary friends of mine. They believe this is the world's largest religion. And what you end up happening is you get Islam, Christianity, Buddhism putting like a veneer over the top of these core beliefs. But there's a lot of animists still in the world today. Out of animism, we get polytheism. And polytheism is a belief of many gods. And it makes sense, because as an animist, you have to deal with and placate and supplicate thousands of spirits. For example, coming into this room to do this lecture, I would have had to supplicate the carpet spirit, the desk spirit, the whiteboard spirit, the fluorescent light spirit, the window spirit, the chair spirit. I mean, I'd still be supplicating spirits. I wouldn't have even got to the lecture yet. But if I instead find out who is the goddess of education and I'm in right relationship with her or him, then as long as we're good, she's going to keep all her little minions, the dry erase markers, the computer, the projector, all of that's going to be taken care of. Same thing. If I'm going to go on a trip across the Mediterranean, I don't have to offer a sacrifice, a flower, a wine offering to every fish, every shark, every manatee, as long as I'm good with Poseidon. If Poseidon and I are good, he's going to keep all the minions in check. So we get polytheism. And then out of polytheism, the three major worldviews we have today come out of these. And I'm not going to draw these proportionally, but the ones I want to address in this class are theism, pantheism, and naturalism, also known as philosophic materialism. And I know this seems simplistic, but it's quite fascinating. If you can find out which of these three someone is in, there's a lot of predictive things you can do about their behaviors, their beliefs, how they're going to relate to the world. And part of how you can do that is through origins, asking each group, how do you think we got here? What's the purpose and meaning of life, and what happens to us when we die? And these are all kind of tied into these worldview pieces. And the way I'd like to look at worldviews in this case, it's just like a pair of glasses that you put on, and it colors everything that you see. And so what I'm going to try to get you to do in this class is to put on, where am I going to start? I'm probably going to start here with you guys and then move through the thing, and we'll end with theism, but it doesn't really matter. What I'm going to try to get you to do is to put on these glasses of these different worldviews and see the world through their eyes. And I know this is asking a lot, but I'm going to ask you to look at pantheism through a theist eyes, but I'm also going to ask you to put on pantheist glasses and look at theists through a pantheist eyes. Then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to get you to look as a pantheist at naturalism, and then as a naturalist at pantheism. And finally, we'll do the same thing with theism and naturalism, materialism. So it's quite a perspective feat I'm asking you to do. It's like literally taking on and off glasses to look at the world from different perspectives. And I think you'll find this quite an interesting learning experience, the way to do this. So let's start here. Theism is a belief that there is a God, but this God is both immanent and transcendent. Now, this is quite fascinating because those are antonyms. What does it mean that God is immanent?
Here.
He's here. Everywhere present. This is the omnipresence of God. There is no place where God is not. God is in my coffee mug. Okay? Fascinating. But God is also transcendent. What does that mean? Beyond, outside of beyond. God cannot be contained. So God is both within all things and beyond all things, inside and outside simultaneously. Woo! Okay, that's great. And all three of the Western theistic traditions believe this. And this is where we find Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They're all theistic religions. They would call themselves monotheistic, although Jews and Muslims think Christians are a little more poly, right? At least tri-theistic because of the Trinity. But Christians, of course, would say, no, we're monotheist, even though it's a tricky monotheism. So these all believe in an immanent and transcendent God. They believe that God is personal and has revealed his will to mankind. The Jews believe this was done through the Torah, or the Tanakh, which Christians would call the Old Testament. Christians believe there was also additional revelation in the New Testament, so they would have the Tanakh and the New Testament. And then Muslims would see both the Torah, or the Tanakh, the New Testament, and the Quran as authoritative and scriptural. So very interesting in the Western traditions, is we would call this like the Western religious traditions. So immanent, transcendent, personal, has revealed his will to mankind. In pantheism, with these two roots, we have pan, which means all, or the world, and God. And so literally what pantheism means is all is God, or God is all. This is where we find the Eastern religious movements, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Sikhism. They would be here. New Age movements we see in California, Europe, those sorts of kind of eclectic bits and pieces. So the idea here is there is no separation between God and the world. So if I was going to draw it in another form, theism, classic theism would look like this. Where we have God, and then we have the creation. Pantheism would have no distinction between God and nature or creation. They're synonyms. And so here we have God with the creation. Here it would simply be two different ways of talking about the same thing, pantheism. So that should be a pretty clear distinction. Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. The universum I, all is God, God is all. Naturalism, materialism, this is the belief that only the physical material world exists. So unlike these other two, a naturalist or materialist only believes in nature. There is no creation or God. Although even people like Carl Sagan and stuff cannot help but say, when we look at the cosmos, when we look at the creation, but it's because they were brought up in a Judeo-Christian culture. I mean, it's just so permeated a part of it, even for scientists who, for all intents and purposes, are naturalist materialists. Basically, naturalism states all phenomena is the world of appearances, all phenomena can be explained through natural processes. You don't need an appeal to something supernatural to explain anything from love to a cough. There's a physical, material, chemical explanation for your beating heart or your hoarse throat. It's all physical material. And the materialism is only the physical material world exists. There is no soul, no spirit, no supernatural, only the natural. Now what's so interesting is, this is pretty neat delineation of terms, but people are much messier. And so we have in-between points between all these as well. Down here, we would have, I've heard it called different things. I'm just going to call it scientific pantheism. And if you've seen the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, which you were supposed to watch at the beginning of class, it's really, that movie is this category. And just kind of like complementary colors on a color wheel, it is the opposite of theism. It's part of why I presented that to you, so you kind of get a feel of what people with different beliefs think about your religion and how authoritarian it is and how it's missing out on a lot of both the physical creation and also our connection to the divine. So here you would have materialist and pantheist, even though these are two completely opposite views, right? Here everything is God, here there is no God, but simply they change the word spirit for energy, and they act like they're talking about the same thing, even though I do not believe they are. But that's the scientific pantheism. Next, in between naturalism, materialism, and theism, we have deism. Can someone tell me what deism is?
Where God is present, but he's far away, like the clockmaker who started the clock and then left his.
Good, clockmaker. He sets the laws of nature and physics in motion, but now he's off doing something else, and he may or may not come back. This isn't the type of God you pray to because you can't pay your rent or because your girlfriend, boyfriend broke up with you. This is a God of law and order, and if you can figure out the way he made the world, you can make predictions about how to live in the world, which you can see the tie-in with naturalism, with the natural physical laws. Many of the founding fathers were deists, so you hear a lot of words like providence or providential instead of like this personal, like evangelical, relational thing with God. Quite frankly, I would see a lot of American and especially European Christendom probably being more in this spectrum. And you might be like, how can you have a Christian naturalist? Well, it's someone who believes in Christianity like other people believe in Greek mythology. They like the stories, they like the morals, they like the psychological insights, but let's not get carried away if they're thinking there's actually a God. I mean, it's more like Christianity is like the Elks Club or the Kiwanis. You network, it has good morals, good way to socially interact, but, you know, God-man, resurrection from the dead, virgin birth, that's not go to crazy town. And so it's really interesting to me how society can be affected. And in Western societies, you see a lot of Christianity in this kind of end of the spectrum. But then over here, we have panentheism. And panentheism is this in-between place between theism and pantheism. And unlike pan, which means all, so literally this is all in God, or you can invert it, God in all. For the panentheist, it's all, all God, God all is, not in. Panentheism, here's our in piece, all in God, or God in all. And if I had to draw this out, like these other ones, a panentheist would have God or the creator, and then within God you would have nature or the creation. Creation, unlike classic theism, isn't happening somewhere detached from God, but is actually nestled within God. So God still permeates all things. There's no place where God is not, but creation is not God. Creation could be destroyed, God would not be diminished in the least. Here, if you destroy creation, you destroy the divine, because they're synonyms. So I hope that's helpful for these worldview pieces. And so what we're doing in this class, I'm going to walk you through the hybrids, their spillovers, because we do have types of Christianity that are more on this end of the spectrum, right? They're kind of dabbling in Eastern esoterica, maybe Eastern meditation, breathing exercises, walking labyrinths, etc. And then you have this crossover between the scientific and the pantheistic community, and like what the belief do we know, etc., where we have these different things. So what I'm going to try to get us to do, just like wearing glasses, we are going to travel through these different worldviews. I'm going to show you what Hindus believe, how they think we got here. I'm going to show you this is where we find most atheists, agnostics, people in the hard sciences, and I'm going to show you how they believe we got here, through the Big Bang, through different sorts of scientific theories, string theory, multiverse theory, these sorts of things. And then we'll talk about these different views, like different interpretations of Genesis. And I'm not going to tell you which one is right or what to believe. I'm just going to present you with these perspectives, and I want you to see the tension and the struggle in your mind. But how powerful, just like a pair of goggles, when you put these on, that is how you're going to see the world. Let me give you one example, and then I'm going to call this good for now. The rainbow. It's like a phenomena, right? But it's so packed with meaning. If you're a Yanomamo Indian in South America, the rainbow symbols the rise of the anaconda spirit, and it means rain is on the way, or floods are on the way, because the rain could be happening way off in the mountains, but then the rivers are going to rise. So when you see the bow in the sky, you know the anaconda spirit, the water spirit, is on the rise. That's a very legitimate animistic way of viewing rainbows. But if you're Judeo-Christian Muslim, God's bow in the sky is a promise never to destroy the world by flood again. But if you're a naturalist materialist, a rainbow is light refracting off of water particles in the sky. It has a purely physical explanation. What's so interesting is, depending on what worldview you're coming from, those are the glasses in which you're going to see the rainbow. And so what we're going to do is try on a bunch of different glasses, and it's going to be trippy, especially if you're not used to this one. These are like kaleidoscope glasses, right? These are very black and white, we have the physical material world. And in this sense, we have one more distinction. On this side of the line is the physical material world. On this side of the dotted line is the spiritual. Hindus believe the physical material world is pure illusion. The spirit is what's real. The naturalist materialists believe no, it's the physical world that's real. Everything else is like a shadow, or we have a mind because we have a brain, but the mind is like a shadow of the brain. It's not a thing. Your brain is a thing. Theists are actually dualists astride both a real physical material world and a real spiritual world. And they cling to both in that sense. And so that's where we're going to head, and we'll see how people got there from animistic beginnings, and then where it's going today, how it's going to affect everything from ethics to politics to your sense of self. All right. Thank you for your time.